It's all gone quiet.
It's morning in America.
It is?
Trump style.
What?
Morning in America. It was when Reagan announced big tax cuts. Hello, everyone. It's morning in America. Except this time it's Liberation Day.
Springtime for Hitler and Germany. Winter for Poland and France.
It's funny, 200 years of free trade and open markets.
Huh?
200 years of free trade, open your markets, we'll blow your port to pieces,
And now it will blow you up if you don't.
And now it's get out.
Well,
get out. Get away from me. We don't want your stuff.
Leave me alone.
There's too much. It's almost like y'all did it too well. We can't handle all this stuff. Go away. Yeah, that's finally the Trump wave function, I suppose, has collapsed after tariffs off and on again, nonstop. Turns out he was serious, very serious. So serious, he had the big, beautiful chart made up. Did you see the chart? Wasn't it a beautiful chart?
Best chart ever.
Announced Liberation Day, April 2nd. He called it Liberation Day ahead of the speech. Anyway, we shouldn't be surprised. Trump, there was a clip I saw.
It's so much MAGA.
You remember his
Liberation Day?
You remember after his formal acceptance inauguration speech, which was indoors this year, then he went to the sports arena in DC, and they gave a separate speech there, and then that's when he sat up the table and began the executive orders and throwing the pens. Mm-hmm. Well, in that speech, one of the things he said was, I think tariffs, such a beautiful word. Tariffs is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. That should have been a clue as to how serious he was. Yeah, of course, there's also clips going viral of him speaking in the 80s about the fundamental problem in the United States. Back then, it wasn't China, it was Japanese consumables flooding the market, hurting US companies and workers. So this is Trump's stick since he became an adult.
He's been an anti-globalist forever.
Yeah, I suppose anti-globalist.
Yeah,
but he's not even. It's not even. I wouldn't even. That term wouldn't even mean. It might mean something to him now. Everyone uses it, but that's almost too ideological. It's just. It's more like.
It's not ideological. It's globalization is a very real thing. It's an ideology, but it's very real. I mean, that's what we're talking about here. That's what he's talking about. Is globalization. Globalization is.
He never used that word though.
Huh?
He never uses that word himself. It's they're killing us. They're stuff.
Well, that's what he's referring to.
Yeah.
It's the economic version of Alex Jones' Globalist. It's the globalists. Yeah. But it's kind of weird because, yeah. It's kind of what, it wasn't hard to predict, or not predict, but, interpretation of what his second term was going to be about, and it was going to be about protectionism. If you remember, I said that. Do you remember I said that?
I remember you said he would wreck the global economy
as a result of protectionism
in January. So
because I said he would wreck it because he was going to undo the entire global system that has existed for the past, few hundred years, basically, by reverting to a protectionist kind of trade policy.
So is he nuts, or does he genuinely think the US doesn't get a battering itself in this process?
Well, it does. There's a remaking of the kind of global trade. It's hard to. I don't know. The whole thing's a bit strange.
I'm trying to understand the rationale.
Whose rationale? Trump's,
but also Bessent's. He's a hoity-toity guy, big time Wall Streeter before he became U.S. Treasury Secretary.
Yeah.
Very much patrician family background, super affluent, and he's totally on board. And he's trying to explain the rationale to Tucker Carlson.
The main rationale, I think,
so he agreed with it. He wasn't acting,
Yeah. The main, I think Trump's living with a problem, living with the results of 20 plus 25 years of, empire, neoliberal empire building. And that empire building was based on the system that Trump is trying to undo now, where basically manufacturing, primarily all manufacturing or most manufacturing, will be done by other countries like China and other countries, and the US would buy all of that, but those other countries would be kept in check by American military prowess and American imperial influence, basically, and
social programs.
Yeah, and all the stuff, the USAID and all that kind of stuff. Basically, empire would keep, and the US military would keep those manufacturing countries, basically the poor people would do all the work, would make all the stuff, and America would buy it from them. But then with the American dollar as the reserve currency, petrodollar, etc., America was pretty much safe economically from that kind of situation, and it would be awesome, There would still be demand for dollars. The dollar would still be king. American economy would still be fine. That's what we lived with, and America has done very well under that system. It's an imbalanced system, but it has done very well under that system. But the problem is that the idea of America being able to keep other major countries, China and lots of other different countries that would be the manufacturing base, and supply raw materials, either supply raw materials or manufactured goods, that they would be able to keep them under control via threats and by American dominance, basically military, diplomatic, political dominance, hasn't worked out, basically. So America and the last, that attitude that approach over the last 25 years, really, before, since the 90s, I suppose. You could go back before that, obviously, but, in terms of the antagonism and the aggressiveness that really came on scene in the 21st century, basically, post 9/11. 9/11 was part of it, to expand America's military power around the world. The project the New American Century, project American military power around the world, all that kind of stuff. That was designed to be able to keep those manufacturing countries, the poor manufacturing countries, in check, basically. You're standing at their doors, basically saying, "Keep working, or we'll beat you," and keep supplying those goods. That hasn't worked out because, well, it was obvious that it wasn't going to work out with we've talked about this before, about technological progress and all those kind of things. And this, nobody did a good assessment into the future type thing. Well, they did, obviously, in terms of that's why 9/11 happened. That's why you have the war, quote unquote, war on terror. The projection of American military power around the world was in order to keep those other potential peer competitors in check. But they didn't factor in, maybe they did factor in hubris, whatever, but they didn't factor in the fact that they wouldn't be able to contain those countries forever, basically, you know what I mean? And with the development of technology and all that kind of stuff, the spread of technology and technological advancement, and the number of people in those countries and the natural resources in those countries. Here I'm talking specifically about China and Russia, but other countries as well. They're the two leaders, basically, but there are others coming up behind, Asian countries, India, etc. You're never going to be able to stop them forever from actually being a real peer competitor. And both Russia and China have developed into real peer competitors, both militarily and economically, over the past, 20 years. To the point now that America has lost that ability to enforce compliance, economic compliance, via military means. So all bets are off, basically. So it was never really, I suppose it was really in the last, particularly since 9/11, but it was happening before that, but America being aggressive, being threatening and unfair, and invading countries and all that kind of stuff, pissing off other countries, other major potential peer competitors. That's not really the way, trade works, if you know what I mean. Trump's trying to undo the idea of trade here. The whole idea of surpluses and so his whole thing about or deficit, sorry, but his whole idea that it's a problem and he's going to tariff these countries that have this trade imbalance, basically, or they're running a deficit with certain countries. That's how trade works with trade has worked forever. It's not unusual that I, for example, imagine I'm a country, I'm one person, whatever. I would, buy more of a certain thing from another person than I sell to them. It's not strange. That's how trade works. What is trade meant to be? Everybody buys exactly the same amount of stuff from everybody else. Do you know what I mean? There's always a complete balance. There's different resources. Different countries have different resources, different proclivities, different histories, whatever, in terms of what they manufacture and stuff.
The US is always down on everyone.
Huh?
The US's balance is always down. No one else's is always down with everyone else.
But it's more complicated in that sense, because here we're just talking about manufacturing, but most other countries in the world run a deficit with the US in terms of services, financial services, IT services, and all that kind of stuff. There's vast billions of dollars that are purchased in terms of services from America by other countries.
Are they not included in the trade surpluses?
No, it's not. Trump's not looking at them, but they should be. But they're selectively just not. They're selectively ignoring those because they want manufacturing back. And Trump wants manufacturing back because it base that whole situation that transpired over the past 20 period of neoliberal imperial expansion, that economic model that they pushed, that hurt the kind of Rust Belt in the South, particularly in terms of the loss of manufacturing jobs that were, outsourced, not necessarily outsourced, but basically shut down in America because other countries were manufacturing products that America was buying. That that hurt the kind of Rust Belt and southern states, southern part of the country, basically, in particular, where most of that kind of manufacturing was based. And so you could say that Trump is basically, you could maybe be cynical and say that he's just pandering to his base, basically, by trying to increase manufacturing, domestic manufacturing, because that will benefit his supporters, basically, his voters, people who vote for him.
If it's just that, why has no one done this before Trump? Why is he the only one? Why was it not obvious in Washington? And why is the rest of Washington?
Right now. Like, I just give a history of it there since 9/11, you know, of the plan that they had, the idea that they had, and how it didn't pan out, you know. A lot has changed in the past 20 years, like.
So, would you say that DC as a whole is with Trump on this?
No.
So they don't agree with it?
No. Because
they want to keep going.
It's a cancelling of the neoliberal imperial outreach agenda. They're not happy about USAID being mothballed and all that kind of stuff. So it's just part of it, basically. It's part of cost saving, money saving. It's a retooling of the American economy to be more protectionist, like I said, to go back to more free trade, strict free trade. But he's being a bit extreme about it in the sense where he's demanding that, you know, all countries must, you know, whatever deficit we run with this country, we're going to impose tariffs so that we don't have to cancel that deficit we have with them. Basically, we're going to stop buying their products. We're going to put tariffs on to force manufacturing back home. I mean, it's a means to an end in a certain sense. You could, in theory, go back once he's supposedly achieved what he wants to achieve, which is bring a lot of manufacturing back to the US, make America a manufacturing powerhouse again. Then you could go back to, you would run deficits with different countries based on what, but overall there would be a kind of a sea change in a certain sense where America would run much less of a deficit with other countries than it had previously. But there would be a loosening or a softening of these tariffs against other countries once manufacturing has been brought back home by the imposition of these tariffs on everybody. Everybody gets tariffs, even the penguins. You saw that story, you know. So that's just like they just did a calculation.
Heard in McDonald Island,
yeah,
where no one lives.
They just did a calculation and just somebody just ran numbers through a program, whatever. Probably Musk, you know, wrote a program or whatever to input all of the countries in the world, just get the full CAA fact. What do you call it? CAA's fact book, checkbook. What's it called? Anyway, the CAA's list of
fact book.
Fact book, is that what it's called?
I think it was called. Yeah.
CAA's fact book of all the countries in the world. Put that in, then put in all the numbers from the Treasury Department of all the deficits. Spit it out. Put it on a board, hold it up in front of everybody and go, oh yeah, well you technically have included every single technically independent country or
it's funny
pseudo nation state on the planet.
And one of them just has penguins.
And one of them has no people. Yeah, but that was the program did it. I mean, we're not going to pick and choose. We ran this to make it efficient, right? We're not going to do it by hand.
I have an explainer for how they came up with the formula. It's going to make you pull your hair out. You're right. So, I didn't know that services are separate, so
they shouldn't be because it's still money.
Trade.
That's because he wants
the US. The US has a trade imbalance in goods with the European Union, and that's what Team Trump's highlighted. Yeah. That's 200 and something billion a year, or accumulated. And separately, total bilateral trade in services between the EU and the US was worth 746 billion euros in 2023. The EU exported 319 billion of services to the US, while importing 427 billion euros worth of services from the US, resulting in a services trade deficit on the EU side of 109 million.
So
I thought it was all the same.
So it reduces the manufactured goods on the physical goods. It reduces that deficit to something like 70 or 80 million or something like that. 70 or 80 billion, not 400.
Trump, I suppose,
or not 300 or whatever it
is. If you're a nuts and bolts person looking at the world, it's hard things that matter, right?
Yeah, but it's money. But that exposes that it's not just about the money, right? because if it was just about the money, it would be much less of an issue, right? If it was just about the official trade deficit and trying to reduce the American
And who-
external debt and all that kind of stuff.
Who works in services? It's not the lower 50% of the working force.
No, probably not. Not mostly. No, not no. They're not. They're white collar workers. They're not blue collar workers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. So he doesn't care about those. He doesn't care about that.
So this is the formula for.
But it's to bring back manufacturing, which is what he's been open about.
Yeah.
Attempt to bring back manufacturing, but
This is from Newsweek. So they were trying to find out from the White House. So how did you come up with these figures for that awesome chart? If you do a word search for towards the end, according to analysts. So how Trump's tariff rates were set, according to analysts and later White House clarification, each country's tariff rate was based on the U.S. trade deficit with that country, divided by the value of that country's exports to the U.S. Trump then cut that number in half, saying he was being kind. While Trump originally claimed the tariffs would reflect not just the trade deficit, but also non-monetary barriers and, quote, cheating, experts believe the administration used a quick, simple formula to push through the policy. Mm-hmm. So what that means, number one there, China, tariffs charged to the USA, that's bullshit. That's not a tariff charged to the USA. 67% is the trade deficit the US has vis-a-vis China. It's not a tariff from China. It's how successful they've been in selling products to the United States. That's not a fucking tariff. So you can't call it a reciprocal tariff. And even the Never Trump media is going along with that. That's bullshit.
Yeah, and it's not and a big like not a certain percentage obviously of that trade deficit with China, for example, is a function of Apple, for example, and many other American companies having their production facilities in China, making iPhones in China, and then sending them back to the US. I mean, that's an American product, right? That's an American company in China making their, or having them made there and then shipped back to the US. It's like, how is that cheating? You know what I mean? It's like, these are American companies, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd like to see the asterisks and the small prints on, quote unquote, non-monetary barriers and cheating. Is that like where, they steal our IP? Did they do industrial espionage and steal it? Or has Apple been there so long they've figured out how to do similar stuff, started their own startups?
Well, globalization means
others are going to figure it out eventually. That's not cheating.
Well, you buy an iPhone and open it up, right? I mean, it's not hard, right?
That effective rate is actually 69%. Trump has effectively, there's now a US tariff on all Chinese products of 69%.
Mm-hmm. That's going to be hard.
It was already at 15. Trump doesn't start this. Interesting. It was at 15 when he took office.
Mm-hmm.
Who was that? Biden? Then he slapped the 20% one last month on China. And now the 34% figure, which is him being kind, is half of 67 as a percentage of the trade deficit. So it's currently at 69%.
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking that basically ends US-Chinese trade temporarily?
No.
Who's gonna pay 69%?
Well, it might. We'll have to see where it goes. I mean, China will have to start looking to other places to try and. There'll be certainly there'll be quite a lot of Chinese products that
they can build a port on this herd in Amber Island.
Yeah, they won't
with the penguins.
Yeah, they'll be too expensive.
Only have to pay 10%.
If you pay 67, if you pay
the penguins 20 cents on the dollar to go and manufacture the iPhones there,
right?
Then maybe
to staff the port.
The Chinese
security.
The Chinese will have to look obviously for some other markets to sell their products that they can't get into the US because of those tariffs. But and that's actually, I think that's going to lead because the problem is that then other countries, who are the other countries? Well, the EU, I think, is China's biggest trading partner. Or
no,
close to America.
I looked. No, not even close. It's America far and away.
Well, it depends for what products though.
Well, these were aggregate figures. It's America number one, baby, and then it's all its four immediate neighbors: Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, actually, the second one isn't really a neighbor. It's because it's Hong Kong.
Right. But anyway, it depends how saturated those markets are with Chinese products already, and how much scope there is for expansion of into those markets. And I think certainly one place they'll be looking at is the EU. They'll try and up their exports to the EU, but then the EU will turn around and have to protect themselves from an oversupply or an influx of Chinese products, to stop the same thing happening to Europe, to protect their industry, to stop the same thing happening to Europe as that Trump is complaining about, let's say, because there's a certain amount that you're willing to accept from another country, but you can't end up being completely dependent on another country for too many of your manufactured goods. So China could. Yeah, I mean, there's some possibilities of what China could do as a result. I mean, one worst, maybe, I don't know if it's a worst case scenario, but one thing countries do in that situation is to change over from, if they have enough shortfall in terms of their customers, basically, for markets for their manufactured goods, they can retool their industry or turn that into military production, start producing, so because these tariffs and all that kind of stuff, tariffs in America, Europe is going protectionist as well. Other countries may do the same thing for Chinese products. So we'll have to turn our manufacturing more towards military manufacturing and then sell those to the rest of the world. And if we can't find enough people to actually sell our military hardware to then we'll have to use it ourselves by starting a war with Taiwan. Because whenever you make a bunch of weapons, you have to use them, right?
Well, there's that. But you just give me an idea. What if behind the public rationale for Europe's massive attempt to the rearm program von der Leyen announced, which was 800 billion investment in weapons manufacturing. Yeah. But what makes weapons? Well, it's steel plants. It's hard nuts and bolts plants. It's industry first and foremost.
It's manufacturing,
energy and raw materials. So
it's manufacturing.
What jobs. She was actually. Maybe what they're really thinking is we have to
do it as well.
Reindustrialize as well.
Well, we have to switch.
The war with Russia is the reason for doing it, but
but we have to switch. Yeah, we have to switch towards, because of this. Essentially, we have to switch we have to put people to work in making weapons rather than making manufactured goods. And but then the problem is when you make all those weapons, you have to use them. You can't just do a one-off, make a bunch of weapons, and then say, "Okay, put them in the stockpile," and that's the end of that game. Let's figure something else out. Somebody has to buy them, basically. You know what I mean? So and people don't buy weapons unless somebody has to use them. So you can sell them to somebody, but they're going to have to use them, right?
Europe's going to need to create an internal neocon market, to get some wars going.
It's like food. You don't buy food and then just stockpile it, because then you wouldn't buy any more. You have to eat it, right? So that you buy more, right?
Okay, that's not good, because that means a war with Russia is more likely.
War with China.
EU with China.
War with China, yeah.
No chance.
America and China. No.
Did any of you watch the Tucker Carlson?
That's why they're blowing up Yemen, and that's why Trump's gone all the MAGA bros like Adam here and stuff are all disillusioned with Trump, because he's meant to be a peacemaker and stuff, and he's bombing Yemen and he's threatening Iran and all that kind of stuff. Well, it's like one way in the interim is to kind of like boost manufacturing while you're trying to get this while you're trying to bring manufacturing back home by imposing tariffs on all sorts of different countries. In the meantime, you can kickstart your economy, or keep your economy taken over by manufacturing economy by making weapons, but then you got to use them, so you got to drop a bunch on Iran.
I read that they blew through $200 million in weapons, in missiles, on Yemen last week alone.
Yeah. But that's why they're doing it, It's just
to make money.
You got to use them to make more. Look, the guys in Boeing and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman are they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs, unless there's orders coming in for more weapons. And nobody's going to order more. The government isn't going to order. The Pentagon isn't going to order more weapons if their warehouses are full, right?
Why can't they make stuff like China does? China doesn't need a war to keep growing 5% every year.
Because Americans want to live on more than a bowl of rice, or want to eat more than a bowl of rice a day.
The Chinese are getting pretty fat, huh?
Well, for now, they might have to tighten their belts. Just wouldn't work. Wouldn't be able to pay the Americans enough.
Back to Yemen in a second. Did either of you see this interview? Carlson with the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I think so, yeah.
A bit of it. I want to play a bit because it explains the domestic rationale for why tariffs and why upending the global trade system. But first, Tucker got it wrong as well, because he primed Bessent by saying this is really about China and its exports, isn't it? And Bessent went on and said, yeah. He said that China's exports as a percentage of its GDP was, quote, unprecedented in modern economic history.
To America, to the world?
No, China in itself, meaning that China's economy is so fundamentally imbalanced because it's so reliant on just mass exports that it would just, he thinks, he was kind of grinning at that point. We've got them now, they're going to crash, or
we can
go slow.
Crash their economy.
He's totally wrong. I checked it. It's not hard to find out. China's total exports are just 20% of its GDP, of which that 20%, 14% goes to the US market. It is its biggest export market, true. But South Korea and Germany, 40% of their GDP is exports. 40%. In fact, the global average is 46%. China's going to ride this out. They're not going to be okay. I mean, they're probably not happy, but I think the Americans are imagining that this is us putting on boxing gloves against China, but no, it isn't. You're putting on boxing gloves and you're going to punch your allies first. South Korea and Germany are most exposed by this. Anyway, so that's troubling. He was very calm and collected, and he gave a great presentation. Even though he's not the best speaker, he made some very crystal clear points. But then when I saw that one and I saw someone fact check it, I checked it myself and thought, if that's what they're saying to themselves in the White House, it better not be. This is how they're going to defeat China, because his basic starting premise was so wrong. There's no basis in reality. But he did say this as well. So I want to play this. This is a couple minutes. I'm
not happy with what's going on in the market today, but the distribution of equities across households, the top 10% of Americans own 88% of equities, 88% of the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. The bottom 50 has debt. They have credit card bills, they rent their homes, they have auto loans, and we've got to give them some relief. That I was struck by the statistic from last year.
That's the message right there. Just as a bystander, I'm like, wow, okay.
All right. Or that, I like the examples, and I was really struck by two different statistics last year. Summer of 2024, Americans took more European vacations than they had in history. Summer of 2024, more Americans were using food banks than they ever have in history. I went into two food banks near my hometown to ask, what's the story? And they said, it really takes, for a lot of people, it's a loss of dignity to walk in a food bank.
Of course.
But they were seeing a new phenomenon, that it wasn't their traditional clientele. It wasn't people who'd lost their homes. It wasn't people out on the street. These were working families who could no longer, $100 at the grocery store, that basket of groceries every week, they were missing 5, 6, 7 things, and they were coming to the food bank to top up. So, that's not a great America. Record European vacation, record food banks. And, no reason we can't keep the record European vacations going, but we got to take care of these other people. And you know what? That they don't want handouts. The Democrats had this strategy called compensate the loser. So first of all, the name of that strategy, I don't think the bottom 50% of Americans are losers. I think the system hasn't worked for them. I think that they are winners. It's just a bad system. So we are going to fix the system. And look, they want good jobs. They want their kids to do better than they do. They want to own a home. They want to pay down their debt. That, this isn't hard. And, I think that we can do this in the next 4 years. Would it have been really fun for me to come in and just keep issuing a lot of debt? And, it's almost like a bodybuilder is taking steroids. Outside looks great. You're muscular. Inside, you're killing your vital organs. Yeah. That's what was going on here. But it would have been easy to keep pumping up the economy, borrowing a lot of money, creating a lot of government jobs. There was no controversy when we're doing all that. But you were going to end up in a calamity. If you go back and look, you look at the financial crisis in 07, 08. Economy looked great right up until then. You go back and you look at the end of the dot-com bubble and then the whole credit problem, the fraud at WorldCom, Enron, some other companies. Economy looked great until it didn't. And I think one of the things that we won't get credit for, but that this administration will have done, is avoiding a financial calamity.
The internal organs he's talking about are, like I said, are the losers, or the people going to the food banks, are people who would vote for Trump.
Exactly. That's the MAGA rationale for why they're doing this. The internal, it's a domestic issue. It's nothing to do with China. It's about the US economy being fundamentally unbalanced.
Well, no, it's because it's a globalized economy, the way it's been set up. You know what I mean? I mean, the US economy is fundamentally imbalanced because of a global system in which it sits, So it is to do with the entire planet, like the entire globe, and that's why it's going to have global repercussions. If it was just an American economic problem, then other countries would be like, yeah, whatever, we'll just carry on. But obviously, it's all interconnected. That's globalism, right? Yeah, and it makes sense. I mean, it's not something you can just dismiss. Like Trump, he's an ideologue, as most people are. And he's got his MAGA ideology, and he and others want it to continue on after he's gone. They want it to be a new America based on the MAGA ideology. So you need to, and you're always going to have blue collar workers, and they seem to like to think that they're locked into this ideology, and it's a conservative, traditional values ideology, let's say. They want to keep that going for years to come. And in order to sustain that and keep those people happy, and they have, it's not just about, obviously, you could, is he an altruist? Is Trump, and are these people altruists? They really care about the voters? Maybe. I mean, it's hard to tease that out, because you care about your voters because you want them to continue voting for you, right? Do you actually care about their livelihood? Well, the two are intertwined, basically. If you want them to continue to vote for you and support your ideology, then you need to make sure that they're happy. If they're no longer happy and they're going to food banks every day, then suddenly they're going to start, there's room for something else to come in for them to, or they'll switch sides, they'll go somewhere else. So you need to keep them on board. And to keep them voting for you, you have to stop the decline, basically, in terms of job losses and people not be able to pay for a week's groceries and all that kind of stuff. That's intertwined with the idea of, I actually feel for these people, and this is a bad look for America. It's bad for these people. I actually care about these people. I've gone and met these people, and I've talked to them, and I feel them. I feel them in my heart. I love them, and they're all my friends, basically, and I'm going to do this primarily for them. But at the same time, you have political considerations, which is like, these are the people who... It just so happens that the people that I really, really love also are going to vote for me. Tease that one out if you want. So, yeah.
Because it's not just all of that as well. I mean, like, the whole tariff situation is, like, this is a complicated mess. Like, Trump got in, to a complicated mess, which was already a complicated mess back in 2016 when he first got in. And so, you know, how you retool something that's already not doing well while it's in operation is a hell of a thing to try and do. And at the same time, like, it's not just, you know, the trade imbalances and all that stuff. Like, part of the issue as well is something that, you know, they just the Senate just like passed or voted on, which is the government funding, the budget. And so they got enough votes for passing the budget in the Senate, and written in there is increasing the budget deficit by an additional $5 trillion. So and this is something that Thomas Massey and Rand Paul have been talking about. It's like, you can't really fix what's going wrong without tackling so many things in tandem. And one of those things is not continuing to inflate people's the currency by printing so much, by using government debt as a mechanism by which you stimulate the economy. Like that kind of thing is not going to end up well.
It's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, and that's something that they're continuing to do. So it's like, on the one hand, they're trying to do the stuff in order to get, like, in order to help the traditional base, but at the same time, you're still continuing to do things that are actively destroying your own endeavors.
Rand Paul crossed the aisle in that vote. It was 51-49. He crossed the aisle and he said, no, that wasn't. So if you remember 2 months ago, the plan was to slash the US budget by $1 trillion. And Musk was part of that in Doge. And I don't know how well they're doing now at this point, but he wanted $4 billion a day. When it came down to it, Republican senators love their programs too much. Now, they said, well, my constituents need the Medicaid or the whatever it was. And in the end, once they've reviewed it all, they just cut like a minute. So they realized the only thing they're going to have to do in the short term now, because what's about to happen is that the lower 50% are about to be hit with much higher prices for consumables. So that $100 basket at the grocery store is about to shrink, and they'll be going to food banks. So they were trying to get this through. And the only way to do it in the short term was to raise the debt ceiling by another $5 trillion. It doesn't mean they're going to hit that, but they just wanted it pushed out of the way for at least a year. So that's what I'm wondering, what happens next, because
in the meantime you try and reduce it by clawing back money from in all these different ways, by cutting all the government jobs, USAID, all that kind of stuff, and by imposing these tariffs.
Well, you need income tax cuts. Those bottom 50% basically need, because someone, I know it's Lindsey Graham, but still he did the numbers. As things stand right now, people are going to be paying more tax this year, and they're about to be hit with much higher prices for daily essentials. That's a double tax right off the bat. Trump probably didn't want that, but he's not saying otherwise. In fact, what he is saying, he posted on Truth Social yesterday. I think these show now. It used to be that we had to be on Truth Social to see his tweets there, but he never mentioned this before, but he's saying it won't be easy and urges Americans to, quote, hang tough. He's got some exclamation marks in there and the usual slogans, but again, China's the battering ram, whatever. I don't even understand the first sentence. China has been hit much harder than the USA.
People were saying that America would be hit harder than anybody as a result of this. This would make Americans suffer. He says, no, China's getting it.
Okay. The next sentence is even worse. They and many other nations have treated us unsustainably badly. Unsustainable? We have been the dumb and helpless whipping post. Okay, that's his point. But not any longer. We're bringing back jobs and businesses like never before. He's bigging up $5 trillion of investment. I suppose that's his AI program with, what's his name? Larry Ellison. and rising fast. This is an economic revolution. That's pretty accurate. This is like Lenin level stuff. And we will win. Hang tough. It won't be easy, but the end result will be historic.
I'm sure it'll be historic. All right.
At least even Millet was saying while campaigning, it's going to hurt. Trump never said that while campaigning. So yeah, that's a bit dishonest to say after the fact. Yeah, austerity, because it's maybe it can't be said in the US. Everything's always got to be up, progress, stocks, return, market, upwards. It's always upwards. And so Trump has had to sell the entire thing since his inauguration speech as golden age, as epic as never before seen. You know, he's got to sell the product, but the product is a bitter pill.
Mm-hmm.
How long? A year, 2? The rest of his term?
The bottom line, you can draw a fairly clear distinction here between the two policies. What do you call them? The Treasury Secretary there mentioned government jobs. You know, like producing government jobs or funding government jobs, and that's what Doge and etc. have been all about. You know, getting rid of all these, or trying to get rid of as many excess government jobs, USAID, all that kind of money that's been paid to. I mean, that employed a lot of Americans as well. You have these people complaining, I just lost my job. And that's what a lot of the protests in the past few days were about.
Yeah.
About 90% of those people in the protests were people who either work for or no longer work for a government department that had recently been shut down or is under threat of being shut down. That's why they're protesting. So, I mean, that's a hallmark of Imperial outreach, the neoliberal imperial outreach agenda, the American empire. Basically, you know, you're creating jobs by creating, like you heard Musk talking about it. There's something like, I don't know what, some ridiculous number of government agencies. There was a new agency created every year for the past, was it every year, one every year or something like that, or whatever. Anyway, vast number of new agencies created all the time under Obama, Biden, and even beforehand. And then, you know, that. Then you've got this, you know, and that employs a lot of people. But they're not blue collar workers, right? Who are being pulled into those jobs. There's not a lot of blue collar workers like southern redneck types, you know, that are going to work for USAID. So those people were being left behind. They're the losers he was talking about. And the government's policy, previous to Trump, the government's policy was just compensate them. Throw some money at them to keep them happy, keep the deplorables happy,
and make sure the goods keep coming in cheap.
Yes,
from all over the world,
and feed them cheap.
To hell with the deficit, just keep it coming.
Yeah, cheaper and cheaper, and we'll keep that going by expanding our government agencies, basically imperial outreach agencies, creating new ones all the time, employing more and more people, and those are jobs, right? That's income tax receipts coming in because there are Americans being employed by a government agency. That's still a job that, you know, has an impact on the employment figures and all that kind of stuff. But on a practical sense, those people are out around the world spreading the good word of the American empire, right? And by that I mean insinuating themselves into the civic and political life of other countries in order to keep them. Well, if you need to overthrow them, basically to maintain empire, to maintain empire.
Yeah.
And that was their plan. That's the way it has been for quite a long time, and that was their plan going forward. Just keep that going. And Trump came in and decided no, and that's why I keep coming back to, like, the thing that makes the difference is that he just saw it as a load of bullshit. It wasn't just, it ideologically, it was bullshit to him, you know, the idea of America spending all this money to fund all these woke, quote unquote, woke and other subversive programs around the world, stoking conflict, all that kind of stuff, overthrowing governments. He wasn't in favor of that, but he was also not in favor of that because it was leaving his base basically behind.
Yeah.
Manufacturing was increasingly being destroyed in America, and those people were losing jobs and ending up in food banks. So he wants to overturn all that, and by definition, it means destroying that American and that infrastructure of the American empire that has been in place for quite a long time. That's been built up gradually over the past 80, 90, 100 years, progressively, and he wants to destroy that now. And the problem is, most of the world has got used to that, and he also saw that it wasn't sustainable. In a very real sense, it was no longer sustainable because, like I said at the beginning, America, one of the linchpins of, or one of the pillars of being able to enforce that American imperial world view and the application of it was having a military that was unchallenged, basically. That was the sole superpower, let's say, and could enforce. USAID and all these other agencies were there to soft power, to enforce and prop up and sustain the American empire, i.e., control over as much of the world as possible.
But it would only ever
soft
be
power.
effective.
But if that didn't work, you have the military behind you. But now with Russia, and particularly Russia and China, who have inevitably
missiles
become peer military competitors, it's like, well, we don't have that threat anymore. Those people can push back against us. So where does that leave us? With soft power?
With rainbow flags on embassies.
We're going to throw billions and billions of dollars every day of American taxpayer money every day at soft power. And what if we get found out? What if people in those countries who are trying to apply the soft power turn around and go, America, Joe Biden, stick your woke rainbow flag up your ass. We don't want, and they start having protests to kick out NGOs. Russia has been kicking out a lot of NGOs. Russia is very strict on American NGOs. And if that becomes contagious, and they have Russia and China pushing a kind of BRICS kind of multipolarity thing at the same time, it's all bad for America. So in a very real way, Trump is being very rational about this, but there's multiple kind of fronts in a certain sense, several different aspects to his motivation for doing this. Some of them ideological, some of them heartfelt for his base, some of them politically cynical for his base, some of them, one of them real world in terms of, look, we can't actually enforce this American empire anymore. I mean, it's already past that point, and it's just going to get worse with other countries making alliances, Russia and China, and then attempting to make alliances via a multipolar world and BRICS, military alliances potentially as well. It's all bad. So we need to stall the digger, stop this march, and do a turnaround. And it's going to be difficult. We're going to have to break a few eggs to make this nice, huge omelette.
Huge.
And it's huge omelette with lots of broken eggs, and oh fuck, it fell on the floor face down. So whatever.
Maybe Trump also, I mean, we just heard from Trump's money man that as far as he sees it, so presumably they've shared thoughts on this. This is also about staving off an actual financial calamity, another 08 crash.
Yeah.
Just head it off, take it by the horns. Don't just let the next bubble do its thing.
For sure, yeah.
Randomly.
I mean, that the whole, for several of the reasons that he has identified, like particularly the Russia and China gaining in power and influence and pushing back against America, that was going to probably, that meant that America's, the neoliberal imperial agenda, or the imperial plan that they've been implementing for a long time, was, reaching its expiring point. It wasn't going to be sustainable. I mean, so he's right in that sense where something had to change. He had to change. He's not doing it just for ideological reasons. I think he's doing it for very real world reasons, i.e. the world order
is changing,
that America has profited from and lived high on the back of for so long is changing, and America was going to come out not very well from it. They're going to suffer as a result. So this is a last-ditch effort to retool the whole system, take the initiative, retool the system, change it around, and go back. Essentially, you are going back to kind of,
do you think
19th, early 20th century and previous global trade system, basically, where each country trades based on their own inherent abilities, productivity, natural resources, etc.
And where's dollar hegemony in this?
Well,
because
dollar hegemony
that's post 19th century.
But that's something else in a certain sense. To you could maybe that'll maybe come along, but I think nobody's talking about that in any serious terms, because a reserve, it's very difficult. Which currency are you going to pick? I mean, it's tied in a certain sense. Well, it's the difficulty to remove the dollar replace the dollars as a world reserve currency is only slightly more difficult than what Trump's trying to do, which is to change this whole system of globalized economic model with America as the enforcer and protector of it. To change that is very difficult, and that's what he started doing. But America certainly doesn't want to change to have some other currency as a reserve currency, obviously, because there's very tangible and important for America, crucial for America benefits that it derives from that fact. The fact that people actually want the American dollar, but at the same time, he wants to at the minute he wants to devalue the dollar in order to make America's upcoming new, huge manufacturing base that he's going to encourage as a result of all these tariffs. That would work much better on a dollar that has been devalued from where it is today, making American goods cheaper. Do you know what I mean?
But factories, that's like 10 years. I mean, that's not going to be... I don't see how he's going to get tangible benefits to that 50% within his term.
No, but he can switch. It's like a train, and there's a lever. It's on one track, and you switch the lever, and it goes on another track. You switch the lever, it goes on another track. Then it's set on that track. It's going down that track. It just so happens that track hasn't been used for a very long time. It's a bit rusty, a few holes in it, maybe a few pieces missing, that kind of thing. There may be a bridge out down the way. Who knows? But we're going down that track for good or bad,
Okay.
Come hell or high water. So like you said, hang tough. It's going to be a bit rocky.
Do you think it's going to be a bit rocky?
Or fuck it all up? Yeah, it's a lot of
So what? The press is uniform. It's pretty universally on song here. This is just going to cause reciprocal tariffs, not just against the US, but against everyone against everyone. And global trade will seize up substantially.
It'll seize up for a while, but then that'll form new trading blocks. There'll be all sorts of new trade agreements. The NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, and all the different trade agreements you've heard about over the years. There'll be all sorts of new ones like that. Different smaller groupings making trade agreements with each other. For me, it makes much more sense. I mean, I'm looking forward to going back to the 19th century. 19th century trade.
I can see you on a horse and cart
in a more equitable world order. Let's say, you know what I mean? Where there's no British Empire, there's no East India Company, and all that kind of stuff.
No hegemony.
No hegemony, except but everybody's going to be fighting. America and Trump will be fighting to maintain as much hegemony as possible, right? They're not that stupid in the sense they're trying to maintain as much leverage and influence that they can, while at the same time undermining the whole thing, but keep what we can. So yeah, it's complicated. But so stuff will, who needs Chinese plastic crap anyway? I don't.
You don't?
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Come on. Go back and look at your purchases the last. See how much of it, either China or if it says Vietnam, it's actually Chinese.
See how much of it I actually need. I'll go through my Amazon purchases list for tax returns and I'll go, yeah, didn't need that, didn't need that, didn't need that, didn't need that.
You bought it though.
I know, but so, I'm not going to.
He's not going to not buy it.
I'm not going to not buy it if
it's available for cheap.
If I need it or whatever and it's cheap, whatever. But yeah, but I'm not going to. Really, there's nothing. If you think about it, think about what you actually need. I mean, I've got him what he needs. He needs on his carnivore diet, he needs like a few pieces of meat a day and a glass of water, horsehair mattress to sleep on, and stars as his blanket, and a fire beside him, and he's fine.
That's all I need.
And no gadgets.
Gadgets for what?
What are gadgets for? What's a gadget?
Haven't we don't people complain all the time about get that phone away from you and stop looking at the computer so much and stay off the internet and get out in nature. There you go, get out in nature. Go hunt some food.
Touch grass, bro.
Touch grass, ground. Hunt some food. Build a fire. Watch the stars. Wait for the comets.
And the computer.
And then at
all
that
the parts.
point, you'll be ready for the aliens to come down and say, "We're here to save you. We're your space brothers." all the drones will come back then.
Well, to listen to the media, there's a revolution has started on the streets in the US.
Yeah, right.
They make it seem like the timing is suspicious because it looks like it follows in sequence with Trump announcing tariffs and then mass protests erupt in the US. So, oh goodness, the Americans are not happy with Trump's tariffs. But then you actually look at what they're protesting about. It's really about Doge and Musk and, like you said, American jobs, American government jobs.
I didn't even called it hands off.
This is some footage of the one in New York yesterday. Pretty big. That's a lot of government workers.
There are millions of government workers, and they're all very, very annoyed at Musk.
And they're all very annoying.
That's the end of it. I can see the end of it, for God's sakes. Play.
But it's a big avenue.
Is that it? Alright, let me see. Okay.
Very big, huh?
Decent amount.
Very big. And one in
30,
Boston as well. And then 50
30,000.
others in smaller cities. But
whatever. Government workers, USAID workers. What do you call them earlier on? Mask holes. They're the people. They're the COVIDiots. Govern me harder, Daddy. Where's my government? Leave my government alone. My government's my sugar daddy. I don't know what I'd do without him.
So I looked up what organization was behind this. This is the primary organizer of these protests yesterday. It's registered as handsoff2025.com. Hands off. We must stop Trump and Musk's illegal billionaire power grab. Saturday, April 5th. Hands off Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, our jobs, our wallets, our books.
Bodies, our
bodies, right. These are the people who made the rest of us take vaccines or else. Fair elections. Wait, what? Okay. Personal data, public lands, veteran services, cancer research, NATO? NATO? Right there, when I saw that, I was like, okay, this is CIA. This is just a CIA op. The motto is not there, but I went to the website, and the sort of slogan for the event was, "This is not just corruption. This is not just mismanagement. This is a hostile takeover." So then you go to their website, handsoff2025.com, and you look at the list of their partners, and surprise, surprise, it's basically a who's who, if you just want to scroll down there, of democratic NGOs, PACs, and CIA-controlled trade unions. Move on, ACLU, AFL, CIA, Greenies, LGBT, yeah. The Democratic, it's like, it may as well just say George Soros. So, shorthand. It's rich, though. This is a hostile takeover. No, it's an attempt to take back from the hostile takeover. And people are getting... Separately, there was a big protest in DC for Gaza. I think people were conflating the two, as I saw it on X, and say, "Oh my God, look at these! The amount of protests rippling all over America against Trump because he's a Zionist. Like, no, that's not what happened. It was a CIA color revolution type thing. Now, the numbers are impressive. There's definitely a lot of people on the streets, but you can't ever be impressed by large crowds in the US because, let's say you've got 20% of diehard, 20% of the voting public are never Trumpers, and they're in cities. Of course, they can turn up in large numbers. So you will get dedicated blue oases, you know. The US is still a sea of red, though.
Even the ones in the big cities, like for New York, that's nothing.
Yeah.
New York has millions upon millions of people. There is that's like 1/2 of 1/10 of 1% of one neighborhood on that street right there. That's when you look at like the total number of people that were out protesting, it's like a large number, but relative to the number of people that actually exist in the country, it's such a tiny minority.
Yeah.
Because there's
8 million people in New York.
Yeah.
Alone. How many were there? 30, 40, 50,000?
If that.
Don't know.
On that street? Well, you could estimate.
Yeah.
It's in the tens of thousands. Somewhere.
I think the Boston one was over 100,000. But then again, it's a very blue city.
Yep.
Maybe it was a one-off. Maybe this will grow. You've got to think of the energy behind the vandalizing Tesla cars. There's this. There could be a replay of the BLM riots coming up.
That's what I was wondering.
We'll see, because it depends on what Trump does.
Those people
does
don't,
next about the judges blocking Doge cuts.
Those people don't riot, though. Those people don't burn down cities. People. You've seen some interviews of other people who are at those protests?
No, but I saw one that was a lot of like boomers, older white people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Or young woke liberals. Like, I mean, they don't burn things down. Like, they key Teslas. That's as far as they go. Like,
okay,
they're not. You want some burning, you have to go to the
yeah.
You want to finish that statement?
No. Just saying, look it up.
You have to go
historically. Look it up.
Certain boroughs,
certain burgs,
ghettos, inner cities. Well, there were a lot of whiteys.
To go to the gypsy encampments.
That wasn't all minorities in 2020 doing that. But yes, it was substantially. And of course, the issue was different. It was backlash about that cop. What was his name? And George Floyd. Yeah, no, it's different. It's not as emotional and stuff. It's not as much of a hot topic. But yeah. It could. I mean, in a year's time, it'll be interesting. Like, if that lower 50% feel worse off, than they were before. It's like Trump failed us.
What are they going to protest against?
I know they don't generally protest. Yeah,
but if it gets to the point where they're actually like no longer able to afford groceries, then yeah, you would presumably get those types who wouldn't normally, but now they're left with little option. So what else are they going to do? Mm-hmm. And that's the other question that I have with all of this is, there's the things that he's trying to do and the things that he wants to do. And then there's the things that the people who actually control the levers of power are allowing him to do. Mm-hmm. And the things that they want to do and could blame Trump for, in order to like rally sentiment against him and for the shadow government types, and see if they can't wrestle back public sentiment away from the MAGA movement.
Yeah, speaking of people in positions of power or pulling the strings, this woman Michelle, Christine Anderson. She's an MEP for AfD. AfD, Alternative for Germany, is the second largest party in Germany. Probably the largest party except for vote rigging. But in the last election, anyway, they came second. And you see her a lot in the European Parliament. She's a German member of the Alternative for Deutschland, and she's a member of the European Parliament. If you scroll down to the video, Scotty, it's just weird to hear her. She's talking to this dude. He used to be a Fox News anchor, was he, or some? Used to be. I can't remember what's it called. What's his channel called? Redacted.
Redacted, yeah.
Redacted. Anyway, it's just a couple of minutes, but it's crazy to hear someone, who's a member, high-level, notable member of the second largest political party in Germany, member of the European Parliament, talk like this. He asks her I think he's asking her at one point, who's pulling the strings here? Have a listen.
Good question. I don't know who's doing it. I really don't. I can tell you it's not Ursula von der Leyen. She is not making any decisions. It's not Bill Gates. It's not even Klaus Schwab, right? They're not the ones calling the shots, because they're the idiots that hang their face in the camera and advocate for all of this nonsense and this totalitarian crap. So it's not them. But who it is, I really don't know. I have no idea. And I usually refer to them, for the lack of a better word, as the globalitarian misanthropists, right? So there is a group of people, I have no idea who they are, but they are the ones calling the shots. And our elected governments are mere puppets. They are just, pretty much implementing whatever they come up with. To what end and what their goal is? To me, it seems quite obvious. It is to ultimately erect a one world government and to transform our liberal, open, democratic, equal societies consisting of free individuals into some kind of a collectivism where the individual is becoming merely a malleable part that can be shuggled around any which way the globalitarian misanthropists need you to be shoveled around, right? So, but it's to ultimately erect a one world government. And that is, by the way, the reason the EU even exists, right?
Right.
So looking at Europe, we're living here on this rather small continent with so many different cultures, traditions, histories, languages even. And the European peoples are proud people. They are. You would have never been able to convince them to just surrender their national state and relinquish national sovereignty to a one world government. They would have never gone along with this. But since they pulled in the EU institutions, right, it's a stepping stone. So it's like, and it's under the pretext of, we've been fighting so many wars on this continent, which is true. And we need to stop this. And the way to do it, we need to come together as Europe and as the EU institutions, right? It's just a stepping stone. So once they are relinquishing ever more competencies to the EU institutions, it's only a small step to then, okay, now we go to the one world government or whatever, right? So, but you need.
So it's the end anyway.
One of us.
Well, like, isn't it weird to see, like, she's like, the AfD, like, you see how the AfD has to be banned, right? Or has to be sidelined and demonized. And you get the same kind of thing out of Marine Le Pen and stuff, and it's an interesting phrase. I don't know who they are, but like all the official government leader, von der Leyen, the European head of state, and all those different people are just puppets, according to her. And again, she's in a position to have a good perspective on it, and she says the people who are running the show and pulling the strings of these puppets are, she calls them globalists, totalitarian misanthropes. interesting to use the word misanthropes, you know, like as in they're people who hate humanity, and they want to institute a one world government to and like you said, the people who's letting Trump do what he's doing, that kind of stuff, you know. I mean, we're deep down the rabbit hole here, but if that's what's happening, whether or not that's what's actually happening, my prediction is that is what will happen, that Trump will, as a result, one way or not necessarily Trump's fault, but he in certain senses will be led along or manipulated in one way or another to create a situation that he's unaware of, where you'll have some kind of a global economic crisis, basically, and which they hope will, you know, allow them to institute a whole new order, a whole new globalist order. Whether or not it'll actually work out, or whether, which more likely I think is, in attempting to do such a thing, they will end up just fucking the whole thing up for everybody, and then they'll do the Homer Simpson thing and retreat back into the hedge and go, well, we tried to fix it, but we thought it was a good idea, but we have to go. See ya. And people will be left to pick up the pieces, you know. And at that point, Space Brothers will come in. Yeah, at that point, your Space Brothers will come in and save you all. And they'll just be another bunch of misanthropes. So yeah, it's all about the misanthropes.
But surely the Space Brothers are working with the misanthropes.
They are, yeah, they're the same.
The way
that's what I said.
You used to make it sound like the Space Brothers are hanging around for the misanthropes to mess it up.
And then they'll come in and save us, but they'll just be another bunch of misanthropes.
But the Space Brothers are also prompting the misanthropes to do this one next.
Yeah.
Do this one.
So they can move in.
Good. Okay.
And speaking of European people, European politicians and stuff who have to be sidelined. In Le Pen's party, Le Pen recently, last week there, got she went down. She was sent down.
Macron jailed his political opponent.
Yeah, she was basically, and this is a pattern in Europe. They're getting desperate, and it's pretty despicable and a mockery of democracy. Like that, you know, the sitting politicians are jailing the politicians that the people actually want and would actually vote for, because no, you're not allowed to have those people. It's actually a sign of desperation when they're going that far, and they're doing it very blatantly. They're doing it in Romania. They're trying to do it in several European countries. They're doing it they've obviously, like the AfD that we just heard from, they're being demonized and sidelined for a long time. And now Le Pen has been, she misused some EU funds.
Allegedly.
Probably did, but then all of them are doing it, but they just pick on her. That's the way it happens, right? So they just pick on the person you don't want. You've got bunches, you allow people to misappropriate money and embezzle money and all that kind of stuff within the system, as long as you're part of the system. If you try to do that, if you do that while not being part of the system, then you're going to get accused of, you're going to be exposed for it, which is what happened to Le Pen.
I would be surprised if what she did actually was illegal. I would be surprised, because I would think that she would be smart enough to realize that what she's trying to do is going to give her more scrutiny than anyone else. And so she should be going out of her way
to
not do that kind of thing.
It actually happened in 2016. It started in 2016, the investigation.
Well, yeah, I know.
That's 9 years ago, right? So this is before, or only at the very, very beginning of the whole resurgence of the left, right, the far right, the evil far right, the populists, all that kind of stuff, the demonization of them, you know. So I think this is brewing. But again, I think this was being done, i.e. basically a lot of her party members, the Rassemblement National, at that time maybe it was the Front National, I don't know. Anyway, her party members, when you send members of your party to the European Parliament as a representative of your party there, you get a bunch of money for aids and office supplies and all this kind of stuff. But with the proviso that you use them for European only business. Yeah. She was paying people who apparently were primarily doing work for her party in France. Now that probably happens all the time, right? I'd say that does happen all the time.
There's a particular incentive for why she did that more, perhaps, than say any other mainstream party in France. for the last 10 years, her party has been effectively debanked.
Yeah.
She can't get a fucking loan in France. At one point, she tried to go to Russia, and they said, "Cool, we'll give you a loan," and they went, "Bang, got you on cooperation with Russia." So you're fucked here, you're fucked here, and then they got her here on this. We got you now. Aren't we clever?
So anyway, the main thing here is just put that back up, Scott. We actually didn't really talk about it. Le Pen's party would lead, according to a recent poll, would lead the presidential elections in France that are planned for 2027. If they were held today, she would win.
Like she would have 10 years ago and
like
4
she probably,
years ago.
Yeah, except there probably was rigging going on.
But probably it's too big to rig next
And
time.
not only that, but it seems that this recent poll comes after the conviction that she got. Now, she got like 4 years in jail, 2 years suspended, so not in jail, and 2 years at home wearing not even at home, just wearing a bracelet, basically.
Yeah.
But the main thing that they wanted to get, that's kind of academic.
The whole point
was to prevent her from running. She's not allowed to run in the 2027 election. And as a result of that, she had a surge in popularity for her being the next president in 2027. So it just shows, I mean, it's as clear as the nose in your face that this is
We know what
politically
comes next.
motivated, and it was an attempt to sideline her. It's probably not going to work. It smacks of serious desperation.
So we know what comes next.
What does?
What-
Revolution.
No.
Vive la Revolution.
July 2024, Butler, Pennsylvania.
How she get shot?
Yeah.
Wow. But she's not, maybe her, I don't know if there's anybody who could replace her or whatever, but I think it's bigger than just her, obviously. The kind of like, the majority of people in the majority of European countries are actually now technically, officially far-right populists. The majority of the electorate.
Yeah, we're ruled by
In
nothing.
in every country, not almost every country, I would say, are far-right populists. That by their terminology. They're not. They're just people who just have centrist. But they've always had basically, well, maybe they've swung a little bit towards the right, but they're basically centre-right, which is normal. They're not far-right anything. They're just called far-right. And that's as a result of mass immigration and woke policies and all that kind of stuff. Governments have pushed people or pushed people in that direction. And then they demonize them for it and prevent them from voting for people who would represent those values that they hold, that they want to see represented by their political leaders. They demonize them for them and prevent them from voting people who would actually uphold those values. So that's super desperate. Like, it's ridiculously desperate. And like I said, so it's bigger than just her. This is a sea change, a mood amongst the population. So it doesn't really matter if it's not Marine Le Pen. There will be somebody else, obviously. There's plenty of people. When the majority of the electorate feel that way, you can be sure there's plenty of people in politics in one way or another who feel the same way as well.
Yeah.
So they're getting desperate, and it's all a good sign. So when a lot of people say, "Oh, isn't this terrible?" There's this crackdown, and there's no democracy in Europe anymore and stuff. Blah blah blah. There's no democracy in America either. Well, there wasn't. Obviously, when they tried to assassinate Trump, we're all in the same boat in that respect. But it's a good sign for me because it's a sign of growing desperation and taking extreme measures, and it's gonna blow up in their face.
Yeah.
Kaboom!
Boom.
Splat.
I just loved I was just like taken a bit aback by the fact that, they got her on embezzlement, which is like, oh man, you're taking money that you're not supposed to, except that she wasn't actually like taking the money. Like normally an embezzlement
It's for personal enrichment.
is for personal enrichment.
No.
And they had to
She was
say,
trying to get her party to survive.
yeah, and that she didn't actually get any money from this. So it's like, it's such a trumped up charge, and you're like, oh, she embezzled money, and it's like, but she didn't do it for herself.
Yeah. And
Unlike every other one of you retards.
And it's the same as in the US, like the entire media against her. She has no advertising time.
Yeah.
But it's even worse than that, because even if you do get miraculously your favorite nationalist leader elected, brown people still get blown up in the Middle East for Israel.
Yeah.
Even if you do cross that insurmountable barrier, Israel wins. Now, I suppose we could make the case there that that's getting more desperate too, and they're just reviled. But unfortunately, a lot of the nationalist right seems to be pro-Israel, somehow still, probably shrinking.
And I saw the interesting statement from Matt Walsh, where there's some like rabbi giving a statement in some kind of like, hearing of some sort, talking about anti-Semitism and how it's not enough to be just, neutral.
Yeah.
You have to be actively anti-Semitic. And Matt Walsh posted it on Twitter saying like, this is straight out of the Black Lives Matter movement handbook for, it's not enough to not be racist. It's not enough to not be anti-Semitic.
Matt Walsh was saying that.
Yeah.
He's still hanging out with Ben Shapiro, right?
Yeah.
Is he allowed to say, I mean, he's a super like beery conservative dad. And,
he's reaching his crossroads one of these days. So he's about to be Candace Owens.
Is he? So he is at least not selling out, yeah?
No, he's been consistent.
Yeah.
All the others just do this kind of schizoidal thing where they, okay, it's Israel, so switch programming. Censor everyone. But Mash, he refuses to bend the knee, and so he'll be out soon.
He was always saying America first, and he was always, and people like went out of their way to be like, oh, you're not saying you're not saying anything about Israel. And he's like, I've said it before, and I will say it again. I am America first, not Israel first. And so that was like his messaging all along.
Yeah, that's about to become verboten speech.
And is he Christian or is he Judeo-Christian?
Christian.
I don't know where you want to draw that distinction, but
I can draw it very easily. A big fat marker right down the middle. It's super fucking easy. Like I said before, if Yahweh was Jesus' dad, that apple fell very far from the tree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's Christian. Israel's gone nuts again this week. I don't know how. I mean, are there stats? The stats I see day to day are 50 killed today, 300 killed tomorrow, and so on. How is it stacking up with the first year of bombardment? I don't know, but it looks horrific.
They at least admitted this time shooting up a bunch of Red Cross workers.
Yeah, because one of them had a GoPro camera running the whole time.
GoPro cameras are deadly.
Was it a GoPro or was it a phone?
I think it was fixed to his chest.
This was
It was a medic. You hear him saying his last prayers.
Yeah. But and then they admitted it. I mean, Israel admits mistakenly shooting dead aid workers in Gaza. Footage from phone found a body seems to support claim the troops fired on ambulances.
Yeah.
Seems to suggest it's like, duh.
Yeah, and again, it's so egregious. Even the UN Secretary General condemns it.
They can't do anything about it.
But tomorrow,
it's all gone.
Who gives a fuck? It'll just be more of the same.
I didn't even see anything in terms of
they hit a school with 27 kids killed. I mean, they knew their kids were in it
when they did the shooting of the ambulance workers and everything. It was that Israel admitted that what they had previously reported and said happened didn't actually happen, and they had previously said that the people who were firing on these ambulance ambulance people, drivers and whatever, that they weren't wearing the reflective gear, that the lights weren't on the vehicles, and that was why they were targeted.
True. Yeah.
And so they've only gone so far as to say that we were wrong.
Mistakenly.
We
were mistaken about those statements. And that's as far as they took it.
We will conduct an internal investigation. Yeah. Same old. I've seen several just this week. I don't know if they're new or they're just going around again because Israel's doing another blitz. It's phone footage recorded by troops getting their orders from their commander. And the commander's, it's translated, so you can't be sure if the translation is accurate, but the commander's saying, okay, you see anything that moves, you kill it. We just, if it moves, we kill it. I mean, that's probably official Israeli engagement strategy. So the whole world knows it. The whole world sees it.
Scumbags. Does the world need like just a big boil on its ass, basically? I mean, is that what the world needs for some reason? I mean, if you take Israel away and that kind of bullshit, I mean, things are, they're not great, but they're tolerable, But why is Israel just there to antagonize and make humanity look bad to Space Brothers or something like that, to aliens or to whoever? I mean, because they do, like, they make the whole world look bad. Like, they're the standout group of people who are the psychos. I mean, we have this group of psychos on the planet, them and the gypsies, like. Gypsies are widespread and all that kind of stuff, but in a concentrated area, a bunch of psychos, it's just weird. Like, every other country has their problems and all that kind of stuff, and have their good qualities and their bad qualities. But the Israelis, why are they even there? Can we get rid of them?
It's like high functioning gypsies.
Yep. You know what I detest? The hand wringing usually by lefties. Every time there's an atrocity, they go, look what we have allowed to happen. Now, I get what they're getting at, because in a longer argument, they'll flesh it out. They'll flesh it out, well, Israel couldn't do this without American backing, without American weapons, without European weapons, without British spy planes, all that stuff. Totally. But easy going there with the we. Like, you're not going to implicate all of humanity in this.
No.
I kind of get, in a sense, we're all responsible. But when you do that, you're humanizing the inhuman. This is totally alien. This is not even the Americans, when they go to war, behave like this most of the time. However, Trump this week absolutely put his fucking foot in it when he posted this gloating post about an airstrike in Yemen, which indeed makes the Americans look like they're no different from the Israelis. And is it any wonder then that the Yemenis rise up and they say, death to America, death to Israel? We won't play it. You've probably all seen it. Trump posted this. These Houthis gathered for instructions on an attack, presumably on American ships, right? Oops, there will be no attack by these Houthis. They will never sink our ships again. Airstrike, kaboom. They're all dead. And people have pointed out, that's almost certainly, there's no vehicles, there's no military equipment. It's almost certainly just a local tribal meeting. Maybe it's Houthi tribe, but whatever, it doesn't matter. It's not a sophisticated military meeting on a fucking hilltop in the open air and daytime. But the US launches an airstrike, they're all dead, possibly with kids, photos of similar gatherings in public like that in Yemen. They bring the kids with them. Maybe women are present too. And as Caitlin Johnson pointed out, and this wasn't even intended, but it's just for all the good things about MAGA, it's just encapsulate the fundamental flaw at the heart of this synergistic thing the US establishment has with Israel. Wait, so Trump's Yemen snuff film not only resembles the WikiLeaks collateral murder video, it was also released on his 15-year anniversary. That's scary, because that shows you the sinking, who's kind 50, of perfect
who's
synchrony.
Who's 15-year anniversary?
Remember the WikiLeaks helicopter Apache video? And back then it took.
That's got to be coincidental.
It took Chelsea Manning to actually. It's got to be
coincidental, no?
Oh, it's coincidental. I don't know. Absolutely. There's no. Trump's not doing this and releasing this. No, to make a point. But that coincidence is a scary one. Precisely because there was nothing intended to it.
Yeah.
And the broader point being made is here, back then you would have to have Chelsea Manning
release
to have the balls, no pun intended, to release it.
Yeah.
Okay, and then WikiLeaks goes, boom, it's the first one. And it was so shocking, The Guardian and LA Times and others were like, oh my God, and they published it. And that was good times for WikiLeaks. Obviously, it all went south after the CIA began its campaign against Assange after that. Things have gotten to the point now where the US president just does it himself and to boast about it.
Yeah.
And what he thinks he's showing isn't what he's showing.
Mm-hmm.
He genuinely, Trump's kind of a naive idiot, he would have been told by the Pentagon, this is a top level meeting and they're plotting to take out the USS Eisenhower, sir, as it approaches the Red Sea. What should we do? Oh, take him out. And it's nothing to do with that at all. And he gloats about it. And it's more innocence dead in the Middle East. And yeah, is it to protect American ships or is it Israel? We'll never know. But everyone sees the connection and it's hard to separate the two because obviously the Houthis are doing what they're doing because they've expressly said it's to stand up for Gaza and that they're having an effect. They claim no Israeli ships or anything headed for Israeli ports passes through the Red Sea now.
Got to use them weapons, man.
Is it just that though, or is it Israel?
That's baseline. It's more than one.
By the way, Trump's second line, they will never sink our ships again. People are jumping in that going, So what you're saying is,
well,
they did sink one.
Claims that happened, yeah. But that would be super covered up. That was under Biden.
And nothing big
last year.
One of those smaller Batan class ones.
Who knows what it was? But you'd never, that's
a never
no-no.
admit to that.
Never.
How do you cover
Ever.
up? How do you cover up that? I mean, that's going to get out, no?
Unless someone has photographs or video footage of it.
Well, there were a few claims that
There
this
were
is
claims, of
footage
course, yeah,
hits.
but it would never be recognized, it would never be admitted. You'd think it would be, but no way.
You just wait a little bit and then you say, oh, it had an accident and sank.
It's coming back.
Doing routine exercises.
Oh, no, he just said, he says return to port. It's returned to its base in San Diego. Who's going to fact check that?
Well, I was just thinking about the U.S. military men who, died during, what is it, like, random like exercises and then
in Ukraine,
yeah, and then really it's just like, no, they were in Ukraine and you're just bullshitting.
Yeah, that's standard. SOP. Yeah, they all do it.
Short-term prediction: there'll be a few such stories in the next few weeks because the Russians hit. They say they probably killed around 85 foreign instructors.
It's become a regular occurrence these days.
Well, it's
in
been
the past month. There was
hasn't been a while, and
maybe a couple of weeks ago.
Okay,
it happened 2-3 weeks ago. But that's because the Ukrainians are just getting. There's more and more stuff is happening behind the scenes in Ukraine where it's being wound up. I reckon it's going to be wound up by May. The war is going to end quickly. It's dragging out, and it seems but there's going to be some move towards, kind of definitive move to wrapping it up. Something has to happen to kind of like. Push it over that edge of it, and then it'll quickly be a done deal, because you can't say it's over and then say, and then drag it on for another 6 months type thing. Once you can only do that before you admit that it's done, or that there's some kind of definitive agreement where obviously there's all sorts of talks going on behind the scenes, but they reach a point where a decision is made and then it's a done deal and then it's over very quickly type thing,
And what happens when the empire wraps up a war?
Start a new one.
That's a new one.
Yeah, although that was the empire. That's not Trump. Have you learned nothing, Neil?
Yeah, but you just said he needs to drop munitions on Yemen to keep the weapons industry going.
Yeah, well, we're not talking about something the scale of Ukraine. Like, that's what they did after Afghanistan. And that was under Biden. But this is Trump. He'll just do some huge small bombings, huge pinpoint small attacks, bombings that will serve as a warning to Iran, and then it'll
fizzle out,
or it'll kind of get out of control in a certain sense, and Trump won't know what to do, and then he'd say, "I'm going home."
Rubio said that it would be weeks, not months, before we know for sure whether the Russians are serious about a ceasefire.
Yeah, for sure. They know it's all bullshit. That's all diplomatic bullshit talk.
Yeah.
They know what the deal is. Stuff's going on behind the scenes all the time, and a deal is being made, and there'll be a change in government basically, this year. Probably this summer sometime, there'll be a change in government. Zelensky will be gone. There'll be a whole new shake-up, a whole new organisation. Get the US ambassador in there for an attaboy. Get Trump in. No, we don't get Trump in for an attaboy. Get Rubio in for an attaboy to glue this thing and get the deets.
Get the deets
to stick. And then tell some people they need to go out, stay outside the government and do their political homework, and others will be put into positions of power.
He learned that speech by heart.
Victoria Nuland.
That phone call. Joe was listening in live, you know.
There's a framework. There's a framework to that. So you just use the same framework. It's tried and tested, you know. It's not going to change just because it's Trump, right? It's going to be the same deal, right?
But that's U.S. empire.
Huh?
They don't do that anymore.
No, but that's it. I mean, the same process will happen where you put in a new government, but it'll be for different reasons.
And presumably this will be Moscow's approval.
Yeah.
One that it.
Yeah. At the end, like, Trump's serious. He's obviously serious about the fact that this war has to end, and he doesn't have the cards. Him and Zelensky don't have the cards. And Russia has all the cards, basically. And Russia's like sending drones, like massive drone attack just last night again. And the Ukrainians shot down basically none of them because there's there's no more air defenses, basically. I mean, that's all drying up behind the scenes. Nobody's talking about that, but that's all drying up behind the scenes. Look at how quickly the Russians are advancing. Keep an eye on all that over the next couple of weeks, and you'll realize that the Ukrainians are fucked. It's over, and the Russians are just carrying on based on their agenda of how much they want to achieve, while at the same time simultaneously talking to the Americans and getting to the point where, you know, it's the game they're kind of playing. You know what I mean? We're going to continue sending massive drones, attacking, like you mentioned, groupings of foreign mercenaries and all that kind of stuff.
In Kryvyi Rih.
Yeah,
don't even pronounce that.
They're going to continue to hit those kind of gathering points, manufacturing plants of, you know, weapons manufacturing plants, etc., drone manufacturing plants.
Yeah,
they're going to keep all that going, while at the same time negotiating, bringing the negotiations to a close with the US. And they really don't have. And the US is going to try and save face and talk all sorts of bullshit, blah, 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 blah. But the end result is completely new government in Ukraine, full of people who will have their orders, basically. Zelensky gone, obviously, and all his people. And that'll be it. All over. Done. Except for a bit of crying. From the NAFO trolls. Wailing and gnashing of teeth from NAFO people. And the like.
And then the golden age will begin.
And then the war with Iran starts.
No, the golden age.
And then your golden age starts.
Come on. We're in the age of Aquarius now.
Yes.
This is it. This is the end of the bullshit, right?
Yeah. The gold. That's when we all get some gold. Yeah. So that's what's going on.
Yeah. Any other items?
I think we're done. Done. Adam's done, is he?
The UK is banning ninja swords, if you want to.
Yeah, Stormer said ninja swords should be banned. Specifically ninja swords. Samurai swords are fine. Ninja swords, no way.
Oh, the UK government's insane.
Yeah.
The regime, I mean, it's not the government. Technically, as a judge yesterday, sentenced a mother of two with another Irish name. I kept seeing that. There's so many Irish Brits, you know, Brits of Irish descent, who were in the front and center of the riots last year. A woman in Connolly, 3 years in prison for a tweet.
That was over the Stockdale riots or last July.
And it wasn't like, you know, go get them, lads, cut their heads off. It was more like,
should they burn down the places that they're housing them in, get them out.
I don't know, it was inflammatory.
Yeah,
no doubt about it.
But
3 years in prison.
Well, yeah, it was 3 years in prison minus. It's actually only end up going to be 40% of 31 months or something like that. It's actually only going to end up being 1 year, but it's still egregious, like for a tweet. It's ridiculous. But apparently, there's something like one a day. One person is arrested per day for something they posted on social media in the UK. Yeah, he's a rare bastard, that Stormer fella. But then he's not the one controlling it. Like Roland from AFD said, he's not the one calling the shots. He's just an arsehole, like the rest of them. Yeah. So we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
Have you got a joke first, Neil?
No.
No? What would you,
Definitely
Adam?
not,
No?
No.
Did you not bring one? No?
No, I didn't bring one today. I left it at home.
I don't have a joke, but I've got a piece of advice for guys, especially if you're kind of like especially if you're a bit older. I mean, you have to be past a certain age maybe to do this, whatever. But basically, just a piece of advice. Super corny, which is the way I like them. So when you're reversing your car, and obviously when there's other people in the car, when you start to reverse your car, you just kind of, you're obviously looking back, or you just go, this takes me back. Try it. People will love it.
Oh my gosh, that's probably the worst one yet.
It's not it's not a joke. It's a piece of advice. It's a piece of life advice. It's a life hack.
It's the worst life advice I've ever heard.
You try it. People love it. You make so many friends.
Something must be in the air. Something's in the air, because look at Brett's joke in the comments.
What do you say? At the bottom.
Yeah.
What is this sexuality called where you...
it's just weird. We can't see it anymore.
What does it say?
I think what is the sexuality called? Can you read it, Scotty?
Yeah. He wrote, what is the sexuality called where you are single for so long that you don't even remember what it's like to have romantic feelings?
Don't know.
Bisexual. As in bye-bye.
That's worse than mine. That's absolutely worse. That's absolutely worse than mine. Bisexual. Come on, Brett. Brett.
Bisexual.
Try harder. That's terrible. Okay, we're going to leave it there for this week, folks. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to like, subscribe. I'm sure you all have done already. Anyway, but just in case you haven't. And we'll be back next week with another show on whatever bullshit has been going on between now and then, of which there will be certainly some. So until then, have a good week. Take it easy. See ya.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Can't stop the signal now.